started. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to PyData Global 2024. And this is a next talk in the general track in the first day of the conference. And this is entitled Measuring the User Experience and Impact of Effort on Business Outcomes. And the presenter here is Maggie Wolf, who's going to be joining us from Chicago. Uh, what I'll do actually is just give a brief introduction of the talk. So the abstract is, how do you know when a user isn't hitting the mark? Do you wait for it to show up in qualitative feedback? Do you have a long list of different metrics that you would have to keep track of that could potentially signal a problem? When evaluating user experience, how do you quantify if it's a good experience or not? Additionally, how do you know if your good or bad experience is impacting other areas of the business? So these are common problems for product managers and data scientists and the analysts who support them. To solve them, I propose creating an aggregate metric that represents the effort or friction experienced by your users, a user effort matrix. So, Maggie, I will let you take it away. But just before that, just to signal to our audience members that we will sort of do the Q&A at the end. There is a functionality there on the right-hand side. There's a little vertical menu bar, and the third one down is a Q&A question functionality. There's also chat there that you can just try out. So also just one more remark, you're also welcome to join us on Discord and the reception area and the other functionalities, the social functionalities as part of the conference. Maggie, I'll let you take it away there.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much. So thank you all for attending this session. I am a data scientist focused on product analytics. And so for the past year, I've been really focused on measuring the user experience and figuring out, once we've measured it, how we can use that to provide impact. So I'm going to go through kind of the typical ways that we have measured user experiences and why it's important to look at effort, how to measure it, what it can tell you, and then kind of what you can do next once you've created this measurement. So user experiences are everywhere. You're experiencing them on websites, mobile apps. We've got digital kiosks for wayfinding. We've got screens in our cars, on our refrigerators. Most of us probably have a smartwatch. So we've got, user experience on your wrist every day, even while you're sleeping. And users expect a seamless experience. All of these digital products have become so ubiquitous that the expectation is this is going to help me. And when the experience is frustrating, that doesn't meet their expectations. But how do you know? So just to set some context, what I mean when I say user experience, it's just thinking about what is it like to use your website or mobile app or other digital product? Is it easy, intuitive, smooth experience, or is it confusing, buggy, and frustrating? And for tech companies, you're the ones building the product. You're looking at it every day. You've designed it. You know how it's supposed to work. So to you, it might seem very seamless. And you might think we have a great experience. It works as expected. But for someone who's using your website or mobile app for the first time, or maybe only once a week or once a month or something like that, how do you know if their experience is good or bad if it's the first time they're looking at it? So the typical ways that we have measured a user experience in the past. So we have the user funnel, and this is very common for product, marketing, or growth teams to look at kind of how your users are kind of leveling up. So looking at your acquisition numbers, are you attracting new users? Activation, are they converting? Are they placing an order or signing up for something? Retention, how often are they coming back? Referral, are they helping to attract more users? Sharing links, recommending to their friends? And then revenue, are they upgrading? Are they signing up for some kind of subscription or moving up to a more premium subscription or spending more money or making more orders? And none of these metrics actually measure the user experience. It's more like inferring. If these metrics are going up, then you probably assume that your experience is good. If they're going down, you assume your experience is bad, but they don't actually tell you about the experience. You're still kind of doing that inferring and making assumptions. So I think it's very important to really measure the actual effort that the users are experiencing. And Why I think it's important is because for tech companies, the user experience can make or break your business. So friction can drive your competition to other options, and then you lose revenue. So one example is, think about, you need to order dinner. A lot of people turn to sites or apps like Grubhub, DoorDash, Uber Eats, even though it's actually more expensive than ordering directly from the restaurant. Why do they do that? Because it's a good experience. It works as expected. They have your information. There's a lot of discoverability. And so even though you can save a lot of money, I've done the math, I can sometimes save 50% ordering directly from my favorite local Chinese restaurant versus when I order through Grubhub. Um, but for the restaurant, because their website maybe doesn't have as good of an experience, their diners are going to now order through Grubhub, and the restaurant might lose because Grubhub wants a cut of the money. So they're losing revenue, and they're not getting paid as much when users order through Grubhub. And then similarly, these apps compete with each other. So if the experience on Grubhub isn't good, then someone can use DoorDash or Uber Eats or any other of the many apps for ordering food. So you can lose revenue if you don't have a good experience. There's also more cost. So a bad online experience people might give up and pick up the phone and call you to place your order. And then you need to have someone who you've employed to answer the phone and take that order. And so that's a higher cost for your business. And this isn't just restaurants. Even I work in travel. We have our whole product is meant for self-serve, people coming online and completing their bookings. And so when they give up and contact our customer service agents, that means we need to employ more customer service agents if the experience is not good. So really thinking about the bottom line was really how we sold this project for our company. And so, as I mentioned, effort can lead to abandonment. They're going to your competitor. It can lead to contact, which is a higher cost. It can also lead to low feedback, a lower return rate for your users, fewer new users if they see that low feedback review, or they're, people aren't recommending it to others, their friends. And then if you have some kind of subscription business, it can lead to client or customer churn. They might cancel their subscription or their membership or account. So this, is not good for your bottom line. And so to measure effort, there's a few different ways to do it. So the most traditional way has been collecting user feedback. Here's an example of a typical user feedback form on the Expedia mobile app. And so the positives are you don't have to guess. People are going to tell you exactly what they think. It's insightful. It can often uncover problems you weren't aware of. But the cons are the data is very sparse, it's very polarized. People are only going to leave comments if they had a very good or very bad experience. It's inconsistent. One user might have a great experience and give you a 5-star review. Another user might also have a great experience, but feel that great is average. And so they give you a 3-star review. Does that mean that they had a worse experience? No, it was just their opinion. The ratings might also be impacted by other parts of their experience. So this is a feedback form on the Expedia mobile app. So they are just thinking about, what is the experience of booking your hotel or your flight or whatever on the Expedia mobile app. But if you have a bad experience while you're traveling, while you're staying at that hotel, or had a bad experience on that flight, you might go back and leave that feedback through the Expedia app, even though they really only cared about your user experience. So then the data starts to get very messy. And then there's also gaps where data isn't collected. So if you're only asking for feedback after somebody completed their booking, you're not getting any feedback from users who abandoned and didn't complete their booking. And then there's also a cost. You need to implement a system to prompt and collect this data. So I'm not saying you should stop collecting user feedback. It is very valuable data, but it's not giving you the complete picture of the user experience. So there's other data that I recommend looking at that can be a signal of effort for your users. And I kind of think about it in 3 different buckets in terms of like severity. So on one end, you have the blockers. So these are things that if your user experiences them, they probably cannot move forward in their user journey. So it might be a technical error. There's a technical issue on your site. It might be a user error. They left a field blank or something like that. Or they searched and there's no inventory, you don't have what they're looking for. So in all of these cases, they're blocked, they can't move forward unless something changes. And then you've got in the middle what I call the possibly blocked friction. So this might signal that, maybe they're blocked, maybe they can't find what they're looking for, or maybe they're just being really picky, or just want to see what else is out there. So on most search results pages, a lot of times you can change your criteria and see what else is available. If you get, stuck and you can't figure out where to go next, you might visit a website's help center, or you might use a chatbot or you might contact them directly. You might spend longer time on your task, although this can be kind of a messy data point or noisy data point, because longer time on task could be due to things like your internet speed, or you got distracted by another task, or it could be due to the experience. They couldn't find what they were looking for. Or if you're repeating the same task, maybe you're searching for the same thing, it could be a signal that you're blocked and can't find what you're looking for. And then finally, kind of on the low friction end are things that aren't blockers, but they're extra steps, they're extra interactions that the user took. So this might be, they're filtering their search results, or they're changing the sort order of their search results, or they're viewing multiple items, or they're repeatedly clicking, or they're going back and forth in the user journey. So these are all like measurable friction points that we looked at. I'm curious, if you work on a digital product, if there's other friction that you would also look at. But these are all the things where we were collecting data, we could measure all of these things and do something with that. And so where to go next? You have this list of friction, you have all this data. And so we thought about, not all friction feels the same. I had the 3 buckets: the blockers, the possibly blocked, and the extra steps. But really, you need to dig in and understand the correlations, or you can use predictive models to understand the measurable relationship between friction and then the things that can impact your bottom line. So looking at what's the relationship with all of these things, with abandonment, they didn't complete their order, or with someone who leaves low or negative feedback, or someone who gives up and contacts you. And then there's also positive things to see. Can we, see where there's, lower friction, if they return back more frequently, or if they, refer other users more frequently. And so start to explore, is friction impacting user behavior? What's that actual measurable relationship? And so then once you have that research, think about, you've got your machine learning, as we call it, and then layer on your human learning. So you've got all the results of your correlations, and you've done predictive models, you have your feature importance, and so you understand the relationship between each individual friction point and the different business outcomes. But really think about kind of your own business or product knowledge as an extra layer of learning on top of that. So for example, we found a very positive correlation between user errors on the checkout page and conversion rates. So basically, users who experienced a user error on the checkout page, so that was something like they left a field blank on the checkout form, or maybe they had an expired credit card number or something like that. And so that would, prompt a user error, that these users actually had a higher conversion rate. They were more likely to complete their booking. And so if you're purely looking at the data alone and not thinking about the user experience, then a bad conclusion would be that we should have more user errors, and then our conversion rate would go up and we have more orders. But that's silly. Like, why would you encourage user errors? Really, that just means that once users get to your checkout page, they are more invested. There's a higher intent to book, and so they're more likely to try to fix their problem. And because it's a user error and not like a technical error, it's something that they can fix. They can input whatever was in the missing field, or put in the correct credit card number or something like that. And so these were the things that we thought about when we looked at all of the data around the correlations and the results of our predictive models, and kind of thought about, if we can put all of this friction on a scale, on a 1 to 5 scale, to give it a weight of kind of what is the user actually feeling or experiencing, and then use those weights to create an aggregate metric. So every time someone comes on our site and they start a search, we can assign a calculated score to kind of measure their friction or effort that they experienced. And so we call this calculated score our user effort index. And so it's an aggregate of kind of all of the searches that any user did on our site, we have measured their experience. And so now that you have this, what can you do? How can you impact the business now that you've kind of done this research and created this new score? So of course you want to improve the user experience. So some of the things that came up for us was like, number one, unexpected, but it revealed gaps in our data collection. We found that there was some friction where we weren't collecting any data. We saw there were certain pages that had 0 rate of errors, and we knew that wasn't true. We knew that errors were happening on those pages. We just weren't collecting the data. And so we had these blind spots. And so now we can start to fix that. So that was step one, is clean up your data. And then the next thing that we did was compare A/B test experiences. So this was actually where this project originated. It came from product managers asking if they could use effort as a success metric, which again, we didn't have. We had the feedback data, but again, I said that, that's very sparse, it's messy. We didn't feel like it was a good success metric for A/B tests. So now we have this user effort index, and we use it as a guardrail. So we're still optimizing for conversion rates, for orders, and then also revenue, but we're using effort with this user effort index as a guardrail so that if we're improving revenue, it's not coming at the cost of a worse experience, because that might show like a short-term gain, but then maybe long-term it might lead to more client churn or fewer repeat visits, and then that would negatively impact things. And then it identifies pain points. So we can see clearly where are there high friction spots in our journey, or are there certain user journeys that have more effort overall. And then these are good candidates for how can we improve the experience in those spots. And then we can also understand, are there certain user types who struggle more and experience more friction? So maybe new users, or look at different geographies, or you can look at different user roles or whatever, however you segment your users, and really dig in and understand like what is the pattern among users who struggle more. And then kind of with all of that information, can you start to avoid effort? So the things we looked at were, if we can identify pain points in our user journey, then we can add messages or prompts or something to help assist that user. And so you've probably seen, in mobile apps and websites, there's lots of little messages and hints, and especially when they design a new experience and a new flow, a lot of times the first time you log in, they kind of give you those little pop-up messages saying, this is different and that is different. Now you can do this. And so this is to kind of help you, and you can do something similar if you can identify the pain points in your user journey. Similarly, if you can identify users who struggle more, then you could create a personalized journey so that maybe they can avoid the effort or friction that they typically experience, and kind of put them on a different path that's maybe bypassing or reducing the chances that they're going to experience friction. And then if you can identify the journeys that have high effort, then you could simplify the journey. Maybe this is an opportunity to use AI, some kind of AI assistant or something like that, to kind of keep them on a nice, seamless, happy path. So this is kind of how ideas for how you can kind of impact your product roadmap based on this metric and all of the research that went into it. And so in closing, just kind of to wrap up, to further drive home the point of why you should care about user experiences and good user experiences. So I'm not going to do a poll or anything, but just kind of thinking, how many of you have an iPhone or an Android device? I'm curious if anybody still has a BlackBerry, because in 2010, BlackBerry actually had 40% of the US market share. And within 2 years, that dropped down to 6% of market share by the year 2012. So that is a significant drop in 2 years. And what happened was that iPhone expanded. Originally, it was only available on AT&T, and then it expanded to Verizon and maybe other carriers. And a lot of customers, myself included, switched from BlackBerry to iPhone because it was such a great user experience. And BlackBerry never recovered, and you can no longer use the BlackBerry operating system, I don't think. I think I checked, it was a few years ago, they kind of discontinued new releases. So that's just a classic example of how a good user experience can really impact your bottom line. And even though BlackBerry had a perfectly fine user experience, it wasn't the best, and it wasn't innovative, and it wasn't as seamless as the iPhone. And now they don't exist. So that's my presentation. Hopefully that was helpful. But curious what you think. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them now, or feel free to reach out on LinkedIn. Always happy to connect with folks.